Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle, because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall, but in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. Right, we still survive and offer grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps is inconspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity, like living in a fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading. Look, they don't even need a reason, it's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming bloody murder. Said it got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics, like condom with some trinkets. Just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets a blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 2020. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat, and maybe it takes a beat and a melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder. Got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on some.
What's happening? What's happening? How y'all feeling? This is RSTV. The brother with the green shirt on over here. What's happening, brother? You good? We live and direct. Got you on mute. Let's unmute you.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm about to do the double do diddy.
The double do diddy.
Yeah, because I'm on two computers at the same time.
Hey man, only you can do that. What's happening? How you feeling?
I'm cool, man. I'm cool. How you doing, man?
Man, you know, we out here rumbling in this wild jungle, multiple continents, you know, trying to survive imperialism, you know what it look like out here. Glad you come on last minute.
It's looking bad for the home team, man.
Looking bad for the home team?
Yeah, it's looking bad for the home team,
man. Boy, you ain't lying. It's you know, Mr. Rogers, you say it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, but I don't know how beautiful it is right now. It's looking kind of terrible. They got me doing triple duty today. I'm back online for the second time today. You know, we kicked it a little bit earlier, so I wanted to definitely bring you on so we could talk amongst the masses. You know, of course, today we know that Dr. Mutulu Shakur made his transition, you know, and you know, I mean, what's your I mean, give us some insight, some feedback on you know, who Dr. Mutulu Shakur was and what he meant to the movement, and you know, what his transition means.
Well, you know, Dr. Mutulu has been in our struggle for a long time. You know, he was one of the core cadre in the RNA for decades, and he participated in most of the RNA's activities during the 60s. He was very close with many of our comrades in the Black Panther Party before they were in the Black Panther Party, like Sekou Odinga, Nikki Laborde, or Abdul Majid. All of many of these comrades are gone now. But yeah, Mutulu, he got involved with us in New York in the Young Lords when we first, in 1960, I think it was 1969. I think it was 69 when we opened up Think Lincoln in the South Bronx. We opened up the Black Panthers and the Young Lords and some radical and some radical. You have to excuse my dog. He's having a episode. Sit
I'm used to
down.
your dogs, man.
Yeah, he's a puppy.
Right.
Yeah, he's 7 months. And his name is Kimu.
Kimu?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Hopefully not like Cabral, who I remember.
Yeah, Kimu. Yeah, you remember Cabral, huh? Well,
Yeah.
Kimu was named after my comrade, Kimu, who was
Right.
killed by the NYPD. I guess there's somebody else coming by the gate. Anyway, now you're getting out of control. Wait, excuse me 1 second. Let me just mute 1 second. I'm sorry.
Okay, handle that. It's all good. We are live and direct. We just decided last minute that we'll be doing this particular piece right here. I threw this crown on to symbolize the fact that I don't really, I ain't too into caring about what's going on in La La Land right now. For folks who are just tapping in, yes, this is live. Again, we decided to do it last minute. Share it, tweet, send it out to your folks. The name of this particular piece we're going to be doing today is called Black Power in the Last Hour. Right now, we're talking about Dr. Mutulu Shakur. I'm with Dhoruba and Wahad, veteran Panther, BLA leader and organizer, former PP. What's happening? How we looking right now, D?
Oh, we good now.
Okay, cool.
So, I'm sorry to your viewers. I'm sorry, interruption. I was saying that in 1969, the Young Lords, the Black Panther Party, and Mutulu, and who will come on later, we took over a drug rehabilitation center in the South Bronx. And it was Lincoln Hospital, a drug rehabilitation center, but it was operating, it was one of the first methadone clinics in New York at that time. And methadone was heralded as the drug that would, stop the white plague, stop the plague in its tracks, when in fact it was a substitute for heroin. And so drug addicts were sentenced in courts in New York to rehabilitation, drug treatment, methadone maintenance, and so they became state dope fiends. They became state drug addicts, and we had a problem with that because we felt that that drug addiction was a mental health issue. We understood that exploitation and white supremacy and racism and the dynamics of the domestic colonization of African people had created health issues, mental health issues amongst African people, amongst poor people. And these health issues led to high rates of drug addiction, not to mention the fact that the Black community was targeted for the distribution of heroin by the CIA, by the State Department, and by organized crime. So drug addiction and heroin addiction at that time was at its height in 1969. And so when the methadone clinic, this new building came up in Lincoln Hospital in the Southeast Bronx, we occupied the premises. We barricaded comrades in, and we occupied the premises, and we started doing political education classes with those drug addicts, those heroin addicts who were in the program there. And it lasted for a couple of years, several years, and Dr. Mutulu Shakur came on board and added his skills at acupuncture to that. And when Think Lincoln faded, I believe it was in 1970, it might have been 1972, 71, 72, I think. Dr. Shakur, of course, took his skills and established later on in that decade, established the COINTELPRO task force that he supervised, that he managed along with Sister Fanny Shakur, and so Mutulu has always tried to be in the forefront of our struggle on a level that many other comrades weren't involved in. And I'm talking about the acupuncture skills, dealing with the health issues of our comrades, of oppressed people, trying to understand how we could create institutions in our community, free health programs, free breakfast programs, and these various programs that we tried to implement as examples to our people of what could be done if we mobilized our own resources and relied upon ourselves to cure our illnesses and protect ourselves from the ravages of white supremacy. So Dr. Mutulu Shakur was a full-fledged citizen of the Republic of New Africa, who was a leader in the Republic of New Africa, who was a writer. He wrote a number of very insightful articles. I think some of them are published. I was in the Black Panther Party, and so our relationship was not an organizational one in that sense, that we were in the same organization. But our comrades, we shared a common pool of comrades, so to speak. Sekou Odinga, Larry Mack, Lumumba Shakur, they all came out of South Jamaica in Brooklyn. And that's where Dr. Mutulu Shakur grew up. That's where he was from as well. And he had an early relationship with the Organization of African Unity and Malcolm X, and so the brother was, it's very painful to have to talk about Mutulu in the past tense,
right on.
And the reason why, one of the reasons why, is because our brothers and sisters who are still, some of them still incarcerated, many of them have come out of prison and passed and transitioned shortly thereafter because the prison authorities didn't want to accept the responsibility and the cost for them dying in their prison.
Right.
When in fact they did everything they could to bring about the demise of our comrade. And I just want to say that it's because of the weakness of the political prisoner issue in the United States, the movement to free our political prisoners, that Dr. Mutulu Shakur only was freed as a matter of so-called mercy by the state, rather than being freed by the power of our movement. This is very sad, and it would be it would be disingenuous if I was to say that the efforts to free our political prisoners is what got Dr. Mutulu Shakur out of jail. It wasn't. You know, we still have Imam Jamil Al-Amin in prison who is suffering from severe illnesses. We have our brother Kamal in prison as Siddiqui, and
Mumia and
Mumia, who's undergoing several medical crises,
right.
and is still around. These brothers and sisters who have been in prison for decades and who are now elderly and in infirm health, because we have not challenged the so-called Black political class, our so-called elected leaders, many of whom are prosecutors in our community. Some of them are working in the state as prosecutors. They were appointed by Black mayors. We have Black mayors, Black prosecutors, Black judges, you know, and yet we have not held them accountable for their failure to really deal with our community and change the racist reactionary class system of law enforcement. Many of these individuals claim that they go into these jobs to change the atmosphere, to change, to bring about change. But we know that's all bullshit. They wind up going in and becoming part of the problem. They wind up going in covering up for the institutions and running interference for those institutions. It's clear that one individual in an institution like the NYPD or the New York court system is not going to change that system from within. He or she is not going to do that. And then we have the other side of that, when some of these brothers and sisters get their law degrees and they go into these professions in law enforcement, in the courts, in the judiciary, as parole officers or whatever, they never use that position to inform the Black community about what is going on inside those institutions that are detrimental to the well-being of our communities. So they will not give us a heads up, for instance, on policies that are designed, the undercurrent of policies that are designed to neutralize our political well-being, to neutralize us as a community. And because all politics is local, that's very, very important, because we've always maintained that that the police, especially the armed agents of the state who consider themselves law enforcement officers, these idiots in blue costumes running around our community, brutalizing us, murdering us, beating us, harassing our families. These individuals are part and parcel of an institution that is designed to maintain and control our communities. And our elected officials, many of whom who kowtow and bow down to these police unions and law enforcement in order to get elected, in order to get endorsements from these unions, wind up catering to these racist institutions more than they react and respond to the needs of their own constituents and communities. So when we talked about public safety and community control of public safety, it was brothers like Mutulu Shakur and Sekou Odinga and other brothers and sisters who were in the party, who were in the RNA, who laid down the radical tradition, the radical history, the radical approach to how we should do this. But because we haven't had a real movement, real movements, when I say real, I don't mean that so-called quote movements that are present today are somehow don't exist.
Right.
It's just that their politics is not based on our radical tradition and history, and informed by those battles and struggles that we already won,
Right.
and that we are now confronted with again in a different in camouflage and different in a different persona. So I'm just saying that when we don't have a mass movements, when we don't have a united front and broad-based coalitions that transcend class, in other words, coalitions between working class Africans in the United States in the diaspora, and professional Africans in the diaspora, as well as unemployed lumpen proletariats on the streets. We don't have organizations that address all of these facets of our community and come together with a strategic program and a strategic plan to empower our community. We have to understand that we are not going to achieve any type of self-determination, any type of control over our community if we don't take control of these institutions. And if we don't make those institutions that we can't take control of respect our political power and our community's ability to get people out on the streets, maybe to the polls, whether it's to boycott or whatever. We have not been able to fully avail ourselves of the panoply of resistance, of instruments and tools of resistance, precisely because we don't have a revolutionary or even an abolitionist movement in a united front with principled leadership, with principled collectives.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned, and since I've known you, you've been pushing the National Black United Front, right? Aside from that, there's been a number of different components that you and the Black Panther Party and the BLA has literally been pushing for a half century. You're not even gonna say decades. We're just gonna say what it is, more than a half century, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, it's a whole lot of encapsulation. It's a whole lot of individuals talking about pretending to be building on the united front, when in fact it's self-serving, right? I want to ask you, because I'm sitting here and all day since I got the news on Dr. Mutulu Shakur, my chest has had like this knot in it. You understand what I'm saying? And it's a cross between pain over his loss. It's disgust in our movement. You know what I'm saying? Because there are many folks in my era, that came up under you all, whereas we know better. You understand what I'm saying? We was able to study the script. We got the blueprint. We was able to learn from OGs and elders. We was able to learn from folks who were considered your elders. You know what I'm saying? From the Alambe Brass to the Baba Herman Fergusons, and you know what I'm saying? And man, what's our brother's name? About to call him Leroy Jones, Mary Baraka, all these folks, to the nationalists, to the cultural folks, the Dr. Benz, the Dr. Clarks, and it would seem like we would know better, but it's like we moving backwards right now. You understand what I'm saying? Everything is about, it's personality driven. If I don't like this particular personality, then we'll leave his ass on the plantation. You understand what I'm saying? Why do you think we're stuck in this particular conundrum, and how do we escape this? Because right now what Pac say, I see in the future and it's hopeless. You know what I'm saying? It's looking bad, like you said, for the home team. How do we get up out of this pot, man? Because I don't know, man. I'm really feeling like a lot of folks today are playing. And I say it because of the fact that we've watched, you as a political prisoner. We watched Mutulu as a political prisoner. We had the posters of you all and the Maryland Bucks and the Mumias and the Russell Schultz and, and Rochelle, who's still locked up 60 plus years. I mean, how do we balance this thing, man, without going over the edge, man? Because I don't even know how y'all did it. And I'm just keeping it solid.
Well, Kalonji, I really, I feel a lot like you do. I think that one of the things that I try to convey to younger people is that many of the battles that we are fighting today, we have already won. Many of the struggles that we are fighting today, we've already won, and the enemy knows we won those struggles. And they have changed, they have moved the goalposts, they have camouflaged the issues off of our victories. They have appropriated our language, our slogans, and everything. We have won these battles, and the problem is that the new generation, the younger folks who are coming up, who want to make some types of changes in our community, who want to empower our people, who want to bring about some type of future for themselves, they are not in touch with that radical history. They are not in touch with that, but the enemy is. And because the enemy is, they know exactly what they have to do to encapsulate movements today who would revisit the radicalism of yesterday. They know how to do that. Encapsulation is a tactic and strategy of war and of domestic repression that takes the energy and the oxygen out of the room or out of the struggle. Out of our militancy, of our revolutionary fervor. We had political education classes on a regular basis in the Black Panther Party, not just for those who were cadre and members, but for the community too. We had, I believe it was the Wednesday, the middle of the week or something, the PE classes was always open to the community. We've always invited students to come, mothers to come, everybody to come and sit in the PE classes and political education classes, because raising the consciousness of our people is very, very key and important. And unless we could address that, we don't stand a chance. And right now, the mass media, the weaponization of data, the use of AI, and these various social medias, TikTok, where everybody could individually be a star or get noticed by tens of thousands of people with the click of a mouse. That's very appealing to oppressed people who are marginalized and not noticed by anybody. It's really ironic that what passed for a movement, the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement, used the term Black Lives Matter, when in the white supremacist culture that is America, that is the United States of America, white folks don't mind, and black folks don't matter. So the fact that they would say Black Lives Matter and use that as a hashtag, as to signify a movement, and it spread like wildfire. It sucked up all the oxygen of a genuine movement. Okay, and then after it sucked up all the oxygen, after the enemy was to consolidated around its opposition and got all of that together, then the leadership bounced. You see, and went on, to live their best life, You see. And many of those who were genuinely involved on the streets on an organizational level, they was left to their own devices to use their own organizations. So when I say that we don't have movements that operate from a principled point of view, a principled mass line. You could have a small organization, but if they're principled in their politics, if they're principled in their relationship to the people, then they don't have no problem with coalitions and alliances with other organizations who are similarly a principle. We may not agree on everything, but we're not talking about uniformity here. We're talking about unity. You see, and united fronts. We have a myriad of examples of united fronts in revolutionary struggles to draw from, to learn, get lessons from. Whether it was the struggles in Africa, whether it was the earlier struggles of working people in America, whether it was the resistance movements in Asia and the Middle East. All of these organizations, all of these movements, whether they were religious, semi-religious, or whatever, they all realized the necessity to broaden their base of support and to appeal to the masses of people in a way that the masses of people could understand what they were trying to do and where they wanted to go. And so encapsulation of our movement goes hand in hand with physical repression and intimidation. And that's where the armed agents of the state come in. And so we don't have too many people's lawyers anymore. We have lawyers that, for the most part, are taking on cases, and the most that they get is a settlement for the family. Who were murdered. We have lawyers that are not political enough to understand a strategic vision of how to practice law in a way that empowers our people, in a way that brings out the contradictions of the system, so that our people could be organized around those contradictions.
Right. And you know what you're saying. I mean, because you just mentioned something. You talked about, and I didn't mean to cut you off, man, but it's just like my emotions. I'm trying not to be emotional, right? But I'm thinking about, you talked about these lawyers, and right now we're in a stage, we're in an era where folks think that because there's a settlement, it means victory. But how is it a victory when the people are paying taxes and the state is just redistributing what they already took from you? You understand what I'm saying? They're not losing nothing. They're taking your tax money to pay someone in the community for murdering their family member. And we hop up and down.
And so what would that tell us then, Kalonji? That tells us then that the armed agents of the state have certain status and privileges over and above any other working class job or position in society. Not only do they have the power of life and death in their hands, they have the ability to coerce and intimidate people, ordinary citizens, under the color of law. If that's the case, then the police are not workers. The police are armed agents of the state, and they should not enjoy any type of labor consideration as a union, you see, because the union then becomes the political cudgel that protects them, that forces us to have to deal with these settlements. You see what I'm saying? The union provides a legal counsel for police who murder us. The unions provide money to put out propaganda and information. And because they're law enforcement, they could also manipulate how witnesses are dealt with, how the community views the issues, because they have enormous influence with the media. And so we should, if we had lawyers that were political, they would have come together like we did in the 60s. We had the law commune. We had lawyers that came together in collectives in order to defend the movement, in order to push the envelope of legal resistance to racism and class exploitation. So these law communes defended the Panther 21. They defended Geronimo. They defended the political prisoners. You see, they brought lawsuits against the state. But today, we don't have lawyers like that, you see. And so...
What do you feel the difference is? Why do you feel that is?
The importance, the essential nature of this is this, Kalonji, that we have to educate our community who are locked in to the laws and the status quo. Our people are trying to survive in this environment, this so-called legal environment. We're constantly told that no one is above the law, okay? And if no one's above the law, then we need to understand what the police unions are. They're a vehicle and mechanism to make sure that the armed agents of the state are above the law. So what should we do? We should bring a class action against the major police unions in the United States. And we should bring a class action to decertify these unions and recertify them in a way that comports with their role in society as armed agents. The United States military doesn't have a union. They're the army, the armed agents of the state. So why do the police have a union? And we need to understand that we're not just talking about an ordinary, small state. We're talking about a nation state that has a military-grade law enforcement apparatus. We're talking about a state that has has tens of thousands of armed agents, police. And all of these people are walking around with guns and the power to kill and murder us, and under the guise of enforcing the law, and they have no restraint. There's no one could hold them accountable. The union's going to protect them. The courts are going to defer to them, and we don't have no power to do anything else. But we do have some power, and that power lies in our ability to hold them accountable. Now, we need to hold them accountable legally, and we need to hold them accountable in the street. We need to hold them accountable in our community. That's why community control of public safety is so important, because it would include residency in our communities, at least for a period of time of probation. There's a whole lot that goes into public safety. There's a whole lot that goes into this. But the mere fact that we brought a suit against these unions doesn't mean that we're going to win the suit. But the educational factor, the ability to have other people come on to the suit as amicus, as friends of the court, other organizations, to bring their analysis and their strategy, whether it's about focusing on the conservative racist and systemic racism in law enforcement. And we could look and understand that this systemic racism in law enforcement is not unique to the United States. Right. It's the same in the UK. It's the same in Britain, the UK. It's the same in France. It's the same in Belgium. Wherever African people are located as a national minority, wherever poor people are located as a national minority, wherever Africans and Arabs who live in Europe are concentrated or have any type of a significant population, the police are straight up racist dogs. Always been that way, whether they speak in French, Belgian, or they got a British accent. Right. So they're tearing up France just like folks tore up here after George Floyd. Right. And what came of that? We have a George Floyd reform bill sitting up there doing nothing, you see. And we have a senile old man that's the president, probably drop dead before the next election. You know, we have this, and then look who you got that's going to back him up. You got somebody like Kamala Harris, you understand, who has a lower rating and acceptance rate than Joe. And then when we look at the history of Joe, you know, he was down with all of the draconian laws that went into creating the prison industrial complex. He was behind all of them, lock them up and throw away the key laws. He was down with all of this, you see. And when he came, and so when I say when we are in the situation we were in the last election, we had a sheepdog in Bernie Sanders. who said all the right things, who analyzed, who was on the right side. He is on the right side of his analysis. I mean, I disagree with certain things with him, just like he disagrees with us. He ain't down for reparations, just like the CPUSA wasn't down with black folks the way we needed them to be down with. They were down with black folks the way Moscow had outlined and Marx had delineated. That was the basis of their analysis. So when the Communist Party went belly up in Moscow, it went belly up in the US. And then we can go back to the history of Du Bois and Garvey and see the history of the Communist Party. So what I'm saying, and I didn't want to segue so much onto them, what I'm trying to say is that we never had, it wasn't the CP or Orthodox left that came up with the idea that we had to have a national united front against fascism. It was the Black Panther Party. It wasn't none of these so-called left organizations, whether they were radical or not, that understood that we had to have community control of public safety and put bills and put legislation in referendums on the ballot to achieve that end. And the enemy understood what that meant, and they countered with civilian complaint review boards.
So let me ask you this, because, of course, and not to cut your bill, but this is things that you all were talking about and doing in the late 60s, early 70s. The past decade or so, you've been talking about decentralizing police. You've been talking about community control of public safety. You've been talking about a class action lawsuit against the police and decertifying these unions, right? Now, I know this because I've been in the background cheering you on. You know what I'm saying? It's been road, it's been rubber to the road, all over the country, all over the world. A whole lot of these so-called activists and freedom fighters, they heard the same thing. Why do you feel it hasn't taken hold, for one, and for two? I'm gonna go a little deeper and I'm gonna say, okay, well, what are some of the issues today? One of the main issues right now that folks are dealing with, particularly here in Atlanta, where you live for some time, you, your family, whatever, the whole Cop City issue. As an organizer, as a seasoned vet, what would be your from your vantage point, what would you have done different? Or what would you do to strengthen up this particular, movement? Because there's a whole lot of folks who have been charged with domestic terrorism. There's been a murder of a activist out there, one of the forced defenders. And of course, that a few weeks ago, City Council basically told over 200 some people to kiss their ass. You understand what I'm saying? Just keeping it funky. What would you do, or what do you say should be done? Because we're talking about building a Black United Front. And is that possible in this era under the current conditions and the particular activists that are out here today?
Well, that's a good question. Is it possible now? Historically, when the Black Panther Party in '69, I believe, called for a national front, a united front against fascism, we used the word fascism in the united front.
Right.
And the reason why we used the word fascism, because we understood at that particular time in 1969 and 70 and 71, that the pushback against the civil rights, the so-called civil rights movement, the pushback against the civil rights movement in the South that had achieved voting rights, desegregated schools, that had changed. You had the Vietnam War and Black soldiers coming home, who felt that like Geronimo, who felt that they had to take a stand and fight for something other than Uncle Sam. That the right wing, the so-called military-industrial complex was on its back foot because of the Vietnam War, because of the embarrassment of the Vietnam War, and the need and the popular resistance to the Vietnam War. So the right wing, the so-called political elite on the right, they hadn't consolidated their power. They were on their back foot in 1969 and 70 and in the 60s. And so when the Black Panther Party called for a united front, it was to consolidate the peace movement, the anti-war movement. It was to consolidate the Rainbow Coalition with other movements in this country, Awukwon, which was Asian, with La Raza, with all of these different organizations who represented different national minorities, who would be the focus of a consolidated right wing in the United States. And you got to remember, at that time, the Republican Party didn't have its so-called radical wing that that evolved after this period, the so-called Tea Party, and all of these were reactions to the gains of working people, you see. And so when we call this united front, it was at the right time, in the right moment, to delay this consolidation of white supremacy's new political paradigm of manipulation and stuff at that time. And so today, though, this right is consolidated. It's been strengthened by laws, by post-9/11 laws that permit law enforcement to do things that would have been illegal, that would have been declared illegal by the church committee when it was investigating COINTELPRO and excesses of the United States intelligence and police agencies, especially the FBI. So we dropped the ball in that sense, because the United Front, when we organized it, you know, we had in mind a strategic vision that all of those organizations and individuals that came from all over the country will go back to their individual cities and set up a national NCCF chapters, National Committees to Combat Fascism chapters. And in these chapters, they would begin to organize and mobilize people to combat police terrorism and the occupation in our community, and put on the ballot decentralization of police and community control of law enforcement. In New York, that's what we did. In other areas, that's what we did. But when a movement is encapsulated, like it was a few years ago after in the wake of George Floyd and the other killings, when the movement is encapsulated, then the types of slogans and ideas that come out of that encapsulation are designed to make sure that we stay where we at, that it don't work. That's why you had, defund the police. The totally asinine, ridiculous idea and notion. Why would you say that and put it out as a slogan? You got to understand, if we had a genuine movement that had a strategic vision, that means every slogan that you use is a slogan that's designed to express the will of the people and educate the people. That's why we talked about power to the people. And everybody know what power to the people means, because they ain't had no power. You see, when we said off the pig, everybody know who the pig was. It wasn't just the police. It was the avaricious landlord. It was the banker. It was all of these different, because pig was a euphemism for those who oppressed us. You see, so what could the police do? Could the police say power to the police? Could the police say off? The police going, what they're going to say, off the people? I mean, so when you have something like defund the police, you see, and Black Lives Matter, then anybody could use those slogans. They'll tell you Blue Lives Matter, dogs' lives matter, living beings' lives matter, a roach lives matter.
Right.
You see, you did that to yourself by late. And if you notice, that the leaders of these organizations were invited to the Congressional Black Caucus at the height of their influence when they had the mic, you see, to what? To define our resistance to the armed agents of the state and how we should approach them. And nothing ever came out of that but the George Floyd Reform Act, okay? Right. You cannot reform police in a police state. Right. And the first admission that we have to say is that we've been living under fascism and under a version of fascism in the African community in the United States from the day we came here. You see, from the day we were brought here. You see, and so if we want to talk about politics being local, we have to do just like Jesse Gray and the tennis movements did in New York, that changed the whole landscape, tenant landscape in New York. It gave control, rent control came out of grassroots movement. You know, those landlords wasn't giving up no rent control in New York. And now what's happening? They're deconstructing rent control right now as we speak, with the largest homeless population in the world. In the US and particularly in New York, you see? Right. So this is what I mean by we had won the victory of rent control, but because we didn't have any movement and no political party to follow that up
and reinforce
it was taken away from us. Now today, rent control, it might as well kiss it goodbye.
Let me ask you this, because right now, and I'm sitting there and I'm hearing all of this, right? And I can't help but, you know, you was talking about sloganeering, Black Lives Matter, you know what I'm saying? Defund the police. You know, one of the terms that's been thrown around right now is Black radical. And I don't know about you, but I've never, that never felt right to me. You understand what I'm saying? It didn't have, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, maybe you can help me out. What the hell is Black radical?
Let me say, I saw that. They had a national Black radical conference or something recently, and dealing with the terminology, because this is what I mean about strategic visions and coalitions and stuff. You have to, radical is actually, if you look it up, radical just means a position that's, you know, a little more intense or extreme than the middle position or whatever. But radicalism is acceptable, can be acceptable in a progressive movement. So if you want to reduce the struggle against white supremacy to reform, then radicalism is one of the terms that you would use. But if you wanted to abolish the system of white supremacy, you would use the term revolutionary. You would use the term abolitionist, at least abolitionist. Did you have any? Was Frederick Douglass a Black radical anti chattel slave activist? Right. He was an abolitionist. He wasn't talking about radical change. He was talking about abolition. Radical change in American society would probably mean, you know, that the Congressional Black Caucus would do more than 2 dinners a year, and that those who go to the Congressional Black Caucus will probably be wearing kente cloths. That might be the official, like the robes of the judges and stuff. Radicalism is okay if that's all you want to do is be at the end, it's be on the outside of the parameters of the issue. We are not in any of these debates.
Right.
And I'm not talking about the conference. I'm talking about we are not in any of these dialogues about police conduct and police behavior and what they are there for and what they do, which brings me back to Cop City. Okay. And it was the city council that ratified Cop City. It was the city council that was taking these this money from corporations that endorsed the police unions and all that stuff. It was the city council that did this, the so-called black elected officials of the community there in Atlanta. Huh? And we know going all the way back to the first mayor of Atlanta, that the black petty bourgeoisie leadership in Atlanta was always collaborators and conscious agents of the white supremacist state. I'll tell you, I'll say it again, that these Negroes in Atlanta was always full of shit.
Right.
Huh? When Martin died, they all bounced and became elected officials. They all bounced and got into politics. And what did they bring? They brought to Atlanta. They brought, you know, the black Mecca. You know, everything. You know, we got the black Mecca in Atlanta. It's the new Mecca. You
right.
see,
and
we got the killer mics that's supposed to be the rappers that's on the militant tip, you know, and then we got, what's that other Negro, the one that used to be in what's the name's government? What's that nigga's name? Andrew Young.
Oh yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, you know, and Andrew Young, you know, he when he was young, you know, he didn't lick boots too tough, you know, he was more, you know, he was more a handkerchief head.
So he started licking later.
Yeah, he did lick it later, you know. But what I'm trying to say is these same elites, these same political elites are the ones that came out of the war on poverty, that came out of the civil rights movement, that punked out of the civil rights movement. Don't get it twisted. When King went down to Memphis to organize for black garbage men, to organize for black sanitation workers and were murdered, all of his crew bounced. There was no more Poor People's Campaign. Nobody was riding no mule train. There was Jesse holding up bloody shirts talking about the Rainbow Coalition. And what did the Rainbow Coalition supposed to do? It was supposed to put black faces in high places in corporate America. When LBJ realized that these cities were burning down every summer, he said, well, these niggas ain't got no stake in these places. They don't have nothing near the stairs. So let's start the war. We do a war on poverty. And all of these were the forerunners of the internet militants. These were the forerunners. Yeah, these were the forerunners of all of these guys. These were the poverty pimps. And they were the first ones to identify black on black crime. Came out first, the poverty pimps, because it was the riots and the rebellions that caused the system to have to stop, look, and listen. If people didn't tear up the streets, there would have never been a congressional black caucus. Okay? So these poverty pimps that segued into politics, that became the Jessies, and that became all of these individuals that wound up in the Congressional Black Caucus and their descendants, they wound up being totally irrelevant to the entire process of black liberation. And so when we talk about something like Cop City, we have to understand, if my first proposition was correct, that the police are armed agents of the state, then it means that the idea of Cop City was to train armed agents of the state. Okay? Now, these armed agents of the state work internationally with other armed agents of the state, particularly the Israelis, the European nation, the European settler state of Israel. The U.S. trains with Israeli agents and Shin Beth agents. They have the new NYPD has an office in Tel Aviv. I mean, the NYPD office in Tel Aviv, I didn't see how that one worked, okay? There's this close symbiotic relationship between U.S. law enforcement and other right-wing juntas, whether it's Egypt, whether it's in South America. We know the whole history of the death squads in South America and how they were trained by American law enforcement. You see, the same thing with Haiti. Was the former police chief in New York that went to Haiti after Aristide was removed to train the Haitian police. You see, so if cops, if that city council, and this is my point, if that city council was seriously a product of Black empowerment in Atlanta, of grassroots working people's political expression, they would have never voted for Cop City.
You know, I want to bring up, because you talking about Cop City, you mentioned Andrew Young, and I don't know, you know, if you're aware, but I know you know that Gilly, the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange, is on Georgia State campus. And for folks who aren't aware, it's strategically located in the Andrew Young Law Building at Georgia State University. So the actual Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange, which is the exchange between Israel and Georgia police, literally that has existed on that campus for 30 years, is in the Andrew Young building. So if anyone is confused,
how poetic.
How poetic.
That's poetic.
That's gangster as you want to be right there. It's like,
because I mean, this is what I said. We already fought these battles and won,
right?
And they know that, and they have institutional memory.
Yes.
And because they have institutional memory, they're able to create the struggles of today. They're able to manipulate and encapsulate the struggles of today. And I pointed out all of that stuff about the Congressional Black Caucus and the war on poverty, because all of these things led in sequence: the war on drugs, the war on poverty, the war on what's the name? Crime.
Crime.
The war, yeah. The war on crime was the pretext of militarization.
Absolutely.
Okay.
War
on, right. The war on drugs was the pretext of mass incarceration. Right. You see, and the war on poverty was to create a Black capitalist entrepreneur class that would advocate, you know, the Boyce Watkins crew, you know, to keep the dollar in the Black community and buy Black and all of that crap, you know. And so, you know, each one of these so-called wars that the government instituted brought forth the agents that we have today that's running shit. You see, and with the police in Atlanta, and this cop, if we had a city council that had put a referendum in 10 years ago for community control of public safety in Georgia, in Atlanta, where we had a Black mayor, where we had a Black city council, where we had a Black population, where we had Black businessmen, where we had Black football teams, we had all this Black shit right there. We couldn't control po-po.
Right. And we talked about this. I mean, you said 10 years ago. The sad thing about it is, in the mortal words of Gil Scott-Heron, it ain't no new thing. You know what I'm saying? Because this is what we was pushing with all those police terrorism panels we did, you know, the rallies, the protests, the press conferences, and a lot of these folks were there.
But you see, you didn't have the money. You didn't have the money of the funding agencies and the funding industrial complex. You know, you didn't have the Soros's money. You didn't have. I mean, when you look at the height of the so-called Black Lives Matter movement, everybody was throwing money at them. Pepsi Cola was, everybody was throwing money, million, and they wasn't throwing no nickels and dimes. They was throwing, you know, 10 million here, 5 million there.
Making it rain. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you and me out there talking about community control of public safety with an umbrella in the rain. That wasn't happening, bro. You know, and people will look at us and say, "Damn, man, I ain't getting involved in the struggle to do bad."
Right.
You know, y'all shoes got paper in the bottom. You understand? So, you know, but then again, here comes Slick Willie. You know, here they come, you know, they clean, they in they slick ride, you know, talking about, you know, crime don't pay.
Right.
Unless crime don't pay and nobody's above the law.
Right. Right.
You see, and that's why it's in Andrew Young Law Center. Nobody's above the law, and crime don't pay.
Amen. You
You see? So I'm just saying, if we had followed through, if that movement was a legitimate movement that was legitimately talking about organizing a united front that could segue into a third political party. You got to understand, the purpose of the United Front wasn't just to decentralize the police. It was to bring together the new left so that we could form a political party, so that we could influence debates and issues.
So do you think that and I'm not even gonna go back to the 60s. I'm gonna keep it, you know, in this decade. You know what I'm saying? If folks would have hopped on board back when we was popping this in 2010, 2009, 2008, do you think that there would even be an argument around a cop city? You know what I'm saying? Would it be necessary for us to even it wouldn't even exist? You know what I'm saying? Because the community control would have already settled in. You know what I'm saying?
Even if you lost the battle for community control, because the police unions had more money than us, even if we lost the battle, they would never open their mouth again about a cop city. They just barely got by. They would say, "We just barely beat that by the skin of our chinny chin chin. Let's not rile that back up again."
Right.
You see, but you don't have that. You have a bunch of individuals on the city council, you understand, who have bought into the notion of the American century, the American dream, the American exceptionality. Because anybody on that city council that doesn't realize that the United States is a white supremacist nation state, and that this nation state is ruled by the gun. This nation state is a police state. And therefore, anything that smacks of police control of the political system would be anathema to that city council person. So they would have never even thought about voting for no cop city. They were trying to say, look, if we need anything, we need a training ground over there, you understand, so that we could train our young people on how to be better community managers, how we need to have our own response apparatus so that we could intervene in domestic affairs, so we could intervene in these gang banging disputes, so that we could intervene in these things with respect from those who we are intervening with. But how are you going to do that when the people have never been educated to the true role of the police? All they do is figure out that the police got guns, the police are there, and they will lie on you, they will kill you, they will shoot you. So you might as well just keep it moving and try not to get involved with these crackers, because it don't mean you're no good. Let's talk. That's it.
Yeah,
police.
You talk about community control, right? Because and that sounds like a foreign thing, but every day we talk about Black Power. In fact, we on Black Power media right now. You know what I'm saying? I think, even that particular term has been watered down. I don't think that folks really understand what's being said when we talk about Black Power. I think Black Power is becoming slowly, if we allow it to, another form of empty sloganeering, right? So, or fashionable militancy, just pure rhetoric, right? What is Black Power as you know it, and what should we be doing if we're talking about operating under?
You don't want me to answer that question.
Man, listen, man. Hey, look, man. Hey, like
I gotta call my lawyer. I gotta call my lawyer to answer this because he gonna say, Dhoruba, don't say that.
Hey,
You're gonna have to come on and clean up.
Give us the adulterated version.
I guess the adulterated. The first thing is that that poor people, that Black people don't mourn. They need to get even.
Yeah.
That's the first version. And following that is that Black Power means that those who transgress against our community and our people there will be a political consequence for that transgression. And that consequence will not be something that they would be comfortable with or that they would be willing to have to suffer under. Now, I know that in the beginning, crackers are going to be feeling all their oats and stuff and feel that they could just beat us down. But you know how we roll. Black don't crack, you see? And so we really need to understand that Black Power means the ability to exert a political consequence on the white supremacist construct that is America when it infringes on our freedom, when it infringes on our humanity, and when it infringes on our right to self-determination. That's what Black Power means to me. And Black Power can be encapsulated, can be used to obscure the class nature of our community, because there are Black enemies of Black people. Okay? There are brothers and sisters who don't mean us well. They only mean themselves well.
That's right.
You see? And they will do anything to maintain that type of influence or position. You see? So they'll use this rhetoric of Black Power. They'll use all of these things in order to maintain themselves. But real Black Power means that we would have to have the ability to exert a political consequence on our enemy, a real serious consequence. And that was the basis, or that was the auspices of the Black Liberation Army.
No doubt, no doubt. Shout out to our brother Mukasa Dada and Kwame Torre, Stokely Carmichael, you know what I'm saying, on popularizing that particular piece. Man, you know, you got my wheels turning right now, you know, so, you know, we don't get on the phone as much. I see you every day.
You don't answer the phone. Don't even go there, bro. You know you wasn't supposed to go there. You never pick up the phone. Don't go there, man. Please.
Okay. I'm bad with phone. Everybody.
Use some other medium like the internet or something.
Anyway, man, my bad. Man, you just threw me off with that one. Right now, there's again, when we talking about, you know, terms and everything, the nonprofit social justice movement operating under the guise of Black Power. You know what I'm saying? How do we deal with that, and how do we differentiate? Because I think that, again, because I see a lot of folks in the chat, you know, it's easy to blame the quote unquote celebrity class, right? We already know what time it is with them. I'm not talking about them. We clear on that. We're also clear about the American Negroes whose sole purpose is to misguide, misdirect, and mislead. We was talking earlier, and one of the things you said that I thought was funny was around pork chop nationalists. You said there's no loyalty amongst pork chop nationalists.
No, there's no loyalty among pork chop nationalists.
Yeah, I mean, how we gonna deal with that? Because I see that as a problem as well, man. And maybe I'm tripping. Maybe I'm getting a little getting older and I'm catching the attitude or whatnot. Ladies and gentlemen, we got Dhoruba's being my therapist tonight. So
man, I don't know how I'm your therapist. I lost my mind a long time ago. That's why I'm over here. I'm still looking for it.
Hey. I got the right therapist, huh?
Yeah, you got the right therapist when he lost his mind.
Yeah, we only one way to go from here. But anyway,
that's right.
I mean, yeah.
So you were saying that when I say there's no loyalty amongst pork chop nationalists, I meant that those who do not emphasize culture as a revolutionary instrument for liberation, rather than a return to traditional roots that do not liberate us in real time, in the here and now. You know, these are individuals, I think, my experience has been, who appropriate all of the trappings of Blackness and culture and all of that stuff. They might have been in back and forth to the continent 29 times. Right. You see what I'm saying? And so to them, merely the expression of our Africanness is empowering. Okay,
just the expression, the uniform.
Yeah, I mean, look at Pelosi when she came to Ghana here. She had Kente around and knelt down and held Mr. Potato Head's hand. Was it Mr. Potato Head? Or who was it? Somebody here. She held his hand and said, "I apologize for the slave trade. We apologize." Okay. Now that we apologize, don't mess with them Chinese no more.
Right.
You see. Don't mess with them. And like I said, there's no loyalty among pork chop nationalists, because you'll have another set of pork chop nationalists who might be messianic in their view, and that's how they practice their pork chop nationalism. In other words, they say that we have a divine mission here, and that we are ourselves, supreme, because we have Black civilization behind us. Once we were kings and queens. I always consider myself trying to be a working class poor man's hero. So that means my ancestors back in Kemet was probably cleaning out the toilets. They were probably the ones whispering to the brick masons that was hauling them big slabs up the pyramid. Man, y'all need some organization, man. Y'all ain't got no union, man. The Pharaoh killed Knucklehead talking about some union. You understand what I'm saying? But they did have unions. They had artisan unions, and people be surprised. I mean, some people would, who haven't studied African history, about how well organized people that contributed to the well-being of the community were, how well respected they were. You see, so cultural national, when I say there's no loyalty amongst pork chop nationalists, is because they will cut each other's throats in order to, be at the top of the heap, in order to be the one everybody invite on Kwanzaa and all the, the different events and stuff. And
I don't even get no more Kwanzaa invitations, man. Like, what's going on, man? I don't.
I never got a Kwanzaa invitation, and I ain't mad at them. I'm not mad at them, but I mean, so because pork chop nationalists have no problem with capitalism,
right?
At all.
That's right. Yeah,
they ain't got one problem with that. You see, you could be a pork chop nationalist and say buy black. You could be a pork chop nationalist and just say, black art, you should buy black art. And you should do all of these things merely because it's black.
You can even say black power.
Yeah, say black power, black radicalism. Right. We could go on and on. I mean, I just saw who was it? I think it was the foreign minister of China told the Japanese at a conference, told the Japanese, the South Koreans, and who else? The Japanese, South Koreans, and another, what's the name? Indonesia, somewhere. Anyway, he told all of them, he says, look, y'all could dye your hair blonde, you could straighten your nose, but you'll never be a Westerner and a European in their system. So what we need to do is we need to all come together here and develop and realize our collective power as Asians. Now, check this out. Japanese imperialism in the 1930s had a slogan. You know what their slogan was?
What's that?
Asia for the Asiatics. And they went on to kick the British ass in Burma, kicked the French out of Indochina, invaded China and set up Manchukuo. And this was all before they bombed Pearl Harbor in 1941. Right. And they used it and they justified their propaganda for their imperialist ventures and expansion was Asia for the Asiatics. And they used the same logic that the Chinese ambassador just gave a lecture that he just gave to the Japanese and South Koreans. Asia for the Asiatics. Now, when we look at pan-Africanism, when we look at Africa, is Africa for Africans? They stood by, the African Union stood by and watched Gaddafi be murdered. The African Union stood by and watched Zimbabwe be sanctioned into poverty. The African Union has stood by and watched the NATO in the Sahel. So no one in the African Union says to African diaspora and the Africans on the continent are for Africans.
Right.
That doesn't mean that that there's a ban or that we're going to build a wall or something around the continent and white folks can't come in and be tourists or come in and invest. That doesn't mean none of that stuff. It means that we have to empower Africa and Africans first. That means we have to raise our own workers up. Africa is rich, but the people are poor. And why are the people poor? Because NATO's in the Sahel, guarding the interests of the corporations from Europe and the EU, who were former colonial masters in Africa.
Right, and that's what Garvey was talking about. Africans for the Africans home and abroad. But of course, when you don't have military power or military might, and you don't have political consciousness that spans across invisible borders and boundaries and different groups and enclaves or whatever, it's a little more difficult, I think
that's right. But that's how the imperialists carved up Africa.
Right,
almost all of the borders and nation states in Africa were created by those boundaries were created by the Europeans. And Lucky Dube, who was a singer from South Africa, he called it Mickey Mouse independence, rope-a-dope freedom, and yeah, he says Mickey Mouse nationalism, Mickey Mouse independence, and you're right though, because the EU, the EU has NATO. The African Union has what? It has no transcontinental police military, right. But it could create one.
Right.
But it's been real slow on that. Why? Because it's being blocked by the United States military and AFRICOM, who are training these soldiers, and the French and all of them. They don't want the Africa to have a unified military command. And Kwame Nkrumah made it very, very clear. He said before there can be economic unity, Africa has to first be politically unified. We have to have political unity. Sure. And this is why the Europeans can go in to different countries with their own agenda and empower the local elite, the local crab apples and crabs in the barrel, empower them, bring them back home, give them a white woman or something, and some money and a long car, you see, and they'll go back and they'll run roughshod over their people. They'll deliver the resources that should be going to empower their people to these Europeans and these corporations, you see. So Africa is devoid of leadership. I think I wrote this back in 1998 in Beggars on Horseback. I think I sent you. I never published it. And
it's about time for it to be published, I think.
Yeah, I got to put a whole thing in there about artificial intelligence. So
well, you better hurry up. I'm doing a book on you already. You don't know it though, so don't even trip.
How you gonna, so listen, man. You're gonna do a book on me before my book on me finish. Huh?
Hey, you know how we do.
I'm gonna try to get your autograph for my book.
Got you.
But yeah,
I'll do the intro, the book on you. But go ahead.
You're right. We can't unify that way, and the thing is, many things are different now than they were then. Because when the Black Panther Party, for instance, and most of the left movements in the 60s, we were in solidarity with most of the armed struggles in Africa and in the Middle East and around the world. You see, we were in such solidarity with it that these liberations movements actually invited our leadership to their liberated territories in their country. This is why Huey and the central members of the Central Committee went to China and met with Zhou Enlai. This is why we went to the Congo. This is why we were invited to the Congo. This is why we sent a delegation to North Korea. This is why we were in solidarity with the PFLP in Palestine. And we had actual support committees here in the U.S. Right. Okay, so this type of international solidarity was directly tied in to the idea and the notion of resistance to global finance, capitalism, and imperialism. You see, right. So in the United States, it's very sad that our elected officials never speak up on behalf of Africa. They never speak up on behalf of the people of Africa. When was the last time you've heard a Black elected official in Washington, D.C. call these two pigs in the Sudan who are killing up the Sudanese people, decry them and demand that the U.S. government do something with these two idiots? You see? You haven't heard a peep. The Congressional Black Caucus is in line with U.S. foreign policy step by step. Whether it's Haiti, whether it's Africa, or in fact, whether it's the South Bronx.
Right. No, and you're on point. And you know, it's funny because, you know, when you talk about the CBC and these other toothless tigers, the reality is, I mean, should we really expect them to speak up for what's going on in the continent when they're not speaking up for what's going on in the local cities, the local blocks that they're on? You know what I'm saying? They don't care about us here.
I mean, they would oppose if by the fickle finger of fate, if we were to launch a national campaign, and we had 6 or 7 different cities that were talking about decentralization of police and community control of public safety. Most of those individuals in the Congressional Black Caucus would oppose it.
Man, listen, I think most of these cats that are calling themselves nationalists would oppose it. You understand?
Well, they probably would. I think they would more or less put a different take on it.
Yeah,
they might put a different spin on it, you know. And
they'll find some personality differences in order to.
I know these Negroes in Washington would definitely oppose it,
without a question.
They're not going to advocate for it because they're the ones that we need to advocate for it.
Right.
And it's the police union that gave them a nod to get elected from the beginning. It's the police union that could cut off their campaign funding. You know, the police union could talk about how they cop haters and they hate police, and then they're going to be on the trail talking about how they don't hate police. They just want even-handed law enforcement. They're going to start hemming and hawing. You don't need them Negroes. You see, so the fact is that that people make it safe for them to come back to their constituency and hold a town hall meeting. And they hold a town hall meeting. Nobody stands up. The Haitian minority in the community don't stand up and say, what did you do in Congress when it came to the U.S. and the UN voting to send troops and UN forces to Haiti? How are you representing the Haitian community in the United States? You ain't heard a peep from him. You ain't heard nothing out of them. We ain't heard nothing out of the Congressional Black Caucus when Aristides was when they performed the coup on him. We haven't heard. We only heard a little bit of stuff when the Haitian refugees were getting beat at the border.
Down in Del Rio, right? Del Rio, Texas, right?
You know, a few of them said something, and they try to put it in the context of residual racism.
Right.
And all of this stuff. We have elected officials and elected intelligentsia that do not mean African people well.
That's right.
That's the bottom line. They want us to become equal opportunity exploiters. They want a seat at the table so that we can be equal opportunity oppressors, so that we could vote yay, send the troops into the Congo, so that we could say, yeah, we want access to cobalt so we can make these batteries and hire black people in Detroit to work for Tesla. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, we'll endorse this company's policy,
Right.
and they'll of course give you some contribution to your campaign, to your political campaign, and you'll toe the line. We don't have black people that go into politics to be the Humpty Dumpty of the political establishment. In other words, a lot of black activists who wind up becoming elected officials, that becomes their career. They want to get reelected. They want to finish what they thought they started, so they want another term and another term, and then they want their homeboy, if they can't do another term, to endorse him, and then he comes in. You see what I'm saying? Or she comes in. What we don't have are black activists that say, man, if they elect me as mayor, when I finish with this city, they ain't gonna never be able to put these crackers back in power again.
Right.
I'm going to decentralize the police by fiat. I'm going to make community control by mayoral decree. I'm going to use my influence on the city council and browbeat them so that civilian complaint review boards no longer exist. Now they community control boards, community public safety boards. I'm gonna say, in other words, you can do all of these things, and then if you don't get reelected, it's all good. Let the next mayor try to undo that,
right,
and see what happens. Once people taste that power, homeboy coming in, he gonna have a problem trying to dismantle it. It's just like Humpty Dumpty. I call it the Humpty Dumpty principle.
Well, listen here, man. On that note, with the Humpty Dumpty principle, we gonna definitely get you back on to figure out how to break this egg. You know what I'm saying? And scramble it.
Man, like I said, it looks bad for the home team, man.
It look bad for the home team, man.
Man, I'm south of the Sahara on the eve of Armageddon, bro. Ass out.
But you like George Michael, you still got faith though, right?
Faith. Wasn't Faith Biggie's girlfriend?
That's about it. Biggie's wife.
Yeah, that was Biggie's wife, right? Faith.
That's about it. That's all.
No, I never had Faith.
Okay.
I didn't know her.
Anyway, we about to get back. Anyway, appreciate you coming on, man. Let's definitely reconvene. Definitely needed.
But let me end with this though. You've seen that we came on, dealing with the good doctor Mutulu. May Allah be pleased with him. May he rest in power. I think we need to understand that these Negroes just talking all of this stuff, our comrades, many of them who have been in the trenches fighting for political prisoners for years, who have been visiting the political prisoners, who have been putting on forums for the political prisoners. We need to really understand that we are not part of the political discussion in America.
Right.
And the reason why is because the political elite in America chooses to ignore our radical history and tradition, and to create a false stealth history of those struggles that makes them look good, that makes them look progressive, and that makes them powerful. I'm saying that if we want the recognition of our political prisoners, we have to make those elected officials who come into our community and our constituency, we have to hold them accountable. They should not be able to show their face in our community unless they are doing something concrete for our political prisoners or in the community. So I think that it's time that we get some drop squads out here, and I'm advocating that we protest the lack of Black political leadership, that we protest irrelevant black faces in high places, that we protest black policemen who claim to be in law enforcement when they turn a blind eye and they turn their head away from the white supremacist and racist police unions that are governing that are their commanders and leaders. So I think that only when we begin to really become part of this discussion, this debate, this national debate on which way the black community has to go to empower itself, can we put the issue of political prisoners to the forefront. No movement is a genuine movement for freedom and liberation if it doesn't put the issue of their political freedom fighters who were in prison and captured first.
Right.
Nelson Mandela didn't get out of prison after they dismantled apartheid. He got out of prison before they did because it was a condition that he get out. You see? Indeed. And we have to do that. Our comrades are dying in prison. Our comrades are being forgotten. And then we're going to have these pork chop preachers and everyone talking about, you know, saving souls and how we have to, you know, empower ourselves. But they never once mention our political prisoners. They never once mentioned Imam Jamil Al-Amin. They never once mentioned Mumia Abu Jamal. That's why when Jared asked me who would I think would be a good running mate for Cornel, and Cornel has maintained, generally speaking, that his sole purpose in running is to create the type of united front that we're talking about, to create a movement, a national movement to oppose the oligarchy, to oppose white supremacy, to oppose all of these things. And if he's serious about that, I said, well, you know, he should have Mumia Abu Jamal for running mate. If anything will catapult Jamil Abu Jamal's case before black people, it's a black man running for president and he's his running mate. But of course, I don't think the Green Party is going to go for that as an organization, as an entity. And so, you know, I'll leave that for all y'all folks to fight over, because I know it's not going to be seriously considered.
Well, we're gonna have Cornel on this Thursday, 13th. You know what I'm saying? And I'll definitely reiterate. We had Jill Stein and the Jamu on. You know, that was the endorsement as well. You know, Mumia for vice president. So we'll see. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, they say pressure bursts pipes, right? So, you know,
that's right.
You know,
makes diamonds too.
Hey man, that's what they say. Anyway, comrade, love you, man. Stay on point. We're gonna win in spite of ourselves. Long live Dr. Mutulu. Free all political prisoners. Free Imam Jamil. Free free Mumia, Maranza, Rochelle, and Dr. Joy Powell, and all of those folks who have been fighting on behalf of our people and those who have been forgotten. Because as you know, which is a whole nother show, not all the brothers and sisters that are locked up have been declared or sanctioned as political prisoners. Sometimes, depending on the organizations and all that, and they say, well, this person doesn't qualify to be a political prisoner.
Oh, and also too, we need a whole nother program on this.
Right. No, we got it.
The Omawali Yatatila and this indictment and stuff.
Omawali Yatatila, yeah.
Yeah, and how they're trying to paint them into the corner of being some type of Russian collaborators. This war in the Ukraine has created the type of political opportunity for us that we're not taking advantage of. And especially with the right wing talking about how the FBI and the Justice Department is weaponized. They were weaponized against us in COINTELPRO. Where's the Congressional Black Caucus holding hearings on the weaponization of the FBI, giving a shout out to Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Right.
Give it a shout. I hear your girlfriend, but you know what they did to Asada, right?
That's right.
You know what they say, right? They're gonna say wrong.
Yeah. That ain't never gonna happen. So we're gonna have you on next week to talk about that. Anyway, be safe out there. We appreciate you broadcasting from the continent. You know what I'm saying? You know, I see your sound and everything getting better out there. You know what I'm saying? You know, everybody eating good on the continent. What's going on? I must be on the wrong side.
I don't know about all that, bro. I guess the reason why we ain't getting cut, we don't have no interruptions is because they're trying to hear everything.
Oh,
so
okay.
So they're making sure
they're
we don't get cut
it.
off.
Yeah, they like you gotta pay the internet bill no more. Listen, be solid. I'm gonna talk to you in a few ticks, brother.
All right, peace, brother.
Peace. You checking out. Where are we? This is RSTV. I almost forgot. That's how hard we work around here. And I gave y'all 2 shows today. We had our brother Balogun on earlier today. Shout out to Balogun. If you missed that, go back and check that. Of course, we just had Dhoruba Ben Wahad. Our brother Jared, he's on right now as well. This is the first time we broadcasting at the same time. He's like, yo, let that thing run and you know, send people my way. So make sure, you know, if you're ready, go over there and check out what Dr. Jared Ball is doing right here on the same platform. Share this, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we're gonna see y'all in a few ticks. Stay on point. Resistance is the key.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, where the battle is to love yourself and function in society, where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy.